Montreal, the everyday, and the extraordinary. The Elias Macco Show on CJAD 800.
Trudy sitting in for Elias. And a little bit later in the show, we're going to be talking about how a lot of Canadians seems to have forgotten, or maybe they were not aware to begin with, that you're not getting the full news story if you spend a lot of time on social media platforms owned by Meta. That's coming up later this hour. Right now, we're talking weather. And we're talking weather because a researcher at McGill University has completed what must have been a monumental task when you think about the scope of it. The digitization of weather records that date back to the 17 and 1800s here in Quebec. Yes, in those times, there was an effort by people to take observations about the weather and not just noting general trends like, oh, spring seems to have come early. We're talking about hard data that can now be used by researchers in the current day who want to learn more about what Canada's weather was like and maybe look to the future and draw some conclusions. We welcome to CJAD 800 Victoria Slanowski, affiliated researcher in the Department of Geography at McGill University and the lead author of this study. Victoria, welcome to CJAD.
Hi, Trudy, and thanks for having me.
Tell us about the spark for this project. What first kind of made you think, you know what, it would be better if all of these documents from the 17th and 18th centuries could be brought into one place, digitized, and become more easily searchable?
Well, I guess it's a long-term dream, not just of me, but of other people who work like I do in historical weather. We know that there are a lot of documents out there, and I guess one of the things that spurred me on was, especially when I was a student, a lot of people were interested in computer modeling. And that's really, really important. It's important that we have computer models to look at what happens and try to understand better what goes on. But we also need to have information about what actually really happened here as opposed to what we think might have happened in our computer model. And these are the only records we have of what actually happened on our actual planet in Montreal or other places. This is all we have are these records that go back to the 1740s and that are written on old paper and fading ink and sometimes are in danger of being disintegrated. So we really want to get to those records before they get lost.
And your search took you international because some of these documents, as I'm learning, were not being held here in Canada.
Well, the original project was sponsored by Environment and Climate Change Canada, and it was specifically to look for records in what is now Canadian territory, because, of course, we have a complicated history of being in different colonial regimes. So to look for overseas records, or records in overseas archives specifically that are about Canada, but that are not in Canada. So some of these records a lot of them are from the U.S., from the Smithsonian. There was a meteorological volunteer research initiative back in the 1850s and 1860s. A fair number of them are also from the UK Army, because the various UK Army regiments back also in like the 1820s to the 1860s, when Canada was a colony of the UK, took weather observations where they had forts and posts. And we also have an awful lot from France, too, because in the French regime, there were people here who were taking observations and sending them back to France as well.
How were they recording weather details? Did they have tools at their disposal in the 17 and 1800s to do accurate weather data gathering?
Yes. So the first instruments that we use for measurements, the thermometer and the barometer, those were invented around the mid-17th century, like the 1640s about. So it's a bit fun is when our first observer in Quebec, Jean-François Gauthier, when he was taking his observations, he was also experimenting with the thermometers because they were still being used to find out what was the best liquid to use. Is mercury the best? Is especially in very cold climates, is it best to use alcohol? And some of the very famous names, which I'm famous for us in meteorology, about people who were looking into temperature scales like Celsius and some others, they were working with the Paris Observatory. So Gautier would send back his observations to the Paris Observatory, and he would say, "Your thermometers aren't cold enough. I can't record how cold it is here in Canada because your thermometers don't go down far enough. Send me some better ones." So it's true. I mean, there's a certain uncertainty, especially when the very cold temperatures, because he was trying to guess how, he's trying to guess what it might have been, but he couldn't really tell. So there we have to put a little blank and say, well, it was cold. So we have to have a little bit of a error margin around some of these. But they were developing them back in the 1700s, and by the 1800s, they were pretty good and pretty reliable.
After you tracked down these records and you started diving into them, anything surprise you about what you were seeing, what was being recorded by these weather observers?
Well, I was surprised by the detail and the meticulousness. And as you say, you kind of look at these things and think, well, can I really count on them? But they spent a lot of time and a lot of effort calibrating them, putting them in the proper sightings, shielding them from the sun so that they wouldn't get any influence from being in the sunlight. So there was a lot of this, even as early as the 1730s, people were thinking very, very carefully about how to measure the atmosphere. And in terms of the weather, what really surprised me is I found some really, really hot summers described in 1754, in 1807, and 1808. And I did not expect that the hottest summers in 300 years would be so far back then. And I actually spent an extra year checking this. And I found some documents that describe the summer. So it's not just the measurements, but we have descriptions of all the small rivers drying up, all the wells drying up, cattle dying of thirst. Which you can't imagine now happening today in, say, the Quebec City region. So it really was surprising to me to see that we had these extreme climate events back then. Now
that these records have been digitized and, much easier for researchers to take a look at historical patterns and then project maybe into the future, is that your hope, is that they will provide the underpinning for current climate research?
Exactly. Yes. We don't know how unusual current climate is if we don't know where we're coming from. So people like to use the word unprecedented a lot. But if you're talking about, this is unprecedented in the last 10 years, well, that's not really very exciting. Unprecedented in 50 years, okay, then you're getting to something a bit more concerning. Unprecedented in 200 years, well, now you're really talking about something that is very unusual. But if we don't have that background, we can't place what's happening in the present if we don't know what came before.
Now that this project is on the rails and up and running, what's your next challenge, Victoria?
Well, the next challenge I'd like to look at is to try to digitize the Hudson Bay Company records. And if any of your listeners are interested in giving us a hand, we have a website at canada.opendatarescue.org, where we're hoping people can type in the records from the Hudson Bay Company, because they were all over the country. And there are some places where we don't have a lot of information from, especially in the north, and we're hoping that this can help us understand not just the climate and what happened, but how it impacted people. Because these are, as well as the measurements, we also have descriptions. So we can see how people reacted to the heat, how they reacted to the wildfires, and other events.
Give us that URL once again.
It's canada.opendatarescue.org. And for people who are interested in Montreal, we have a Montreal site where we're just looking at Montreal records, and that website is draw, DRAW, at geog, GEOG.McGill.ca.
All right. Thank you very much for the interview. Much appreciated.
It's a pleasure talking to you.
We have been speaking to McGill researcher and weather studier as well in the Department of Geography at McGill University, Victoria Slonowski. When we return, we are going to turn our attention to the news that, in between, I forgot about this. I got to stay on track. You can tell it's Friday. We're going to be speaking to a woman who has gone from university professor to award-winning editor-in-chief of an online magazine specifically focusing on Canada's Black community. That's coming up.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Time is valuable. Thanks for spending your morning with us. The Elias Macko Show on News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
Trudy Mason sitting in for Elias, and we are talking now about a woman who seems to be a perpetual motion machine. She has been so active in so many circles for so many years. You might recognize her name, Dr. Charmaine Nelson. She is a former Concordia and McGill professor, now founder and editor-in-chief of the award-winning Black Maple magazine. She is a prolific writer. She has lectured. Her expertise is in art history, but it goes beyond that. She also has expertise in the Black community experience here in Canada. And now she can add fiction publisher, romance publisher to her credentials. Dr. Charmaine Nelson, thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Trudy. It's such a pleasure to be with you. And just one slight correction. I got 2 degrees from Concordia, undergrad and master's, did my PhD in England, but I was at McGill. I taught there for 17 years.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it. So first of all, tell us why, in the midst of academia, all your academic activities, you decided to found Black Maple magazine online.
Absolutely, Trudy. So listen, it started as blackcanadianstudies.com, which I used as a website just to spread the word about the wonderful research that my colleagues were doing, historical and contemporary work across disciplines on Black Canada, everything to do with Black Canada. And that went on until about 2022. And Trudy, I woke up and I said, wait a second. I can be actually creating original content here too and turn this into a real magazine, online platform that is generating the content as opposed to just always displaying what other people have done. So in 2022, then, Trudy, is when I switched over to having, for instance, a features section, what I call the pop list, where we are constantly reviewing streaming, TV shows, films, sports, and pop cultural events, obits, things like that. And also really central is what we call the self-care circle, where we feature health and wellness articles, though, that are focused on Black health and wellness. So, for instance, there's a great article on new developments on sickle cell, which afflicts a lot of people of African descent, and an article on menopause as it impacts Black women, which, as you might guess, because of racism in healthcare practice, we are suffering longer and more symptoms than the average white woman, right? So most mainstream Canadian magazines and newspapers, when they default to an assumed white Canadian when they do such things, right? So when they would be recommending, for instance, what's the dose of vitamin D that a person, quote unquote, person should be taking, they would say what the white man or woman should be taking, not a person with melanated skin. So all these types of built-in biases into mainstream coded white media, we're trying to then, fight back, push back against those and center a Black Canadian population, of which we are now 1.5 million people in Canada out of our 40 million population. So we're a completely significant population that has sadly been almost completely shut out of the media landscape in Canada.
You have, as I mentioned, prolific writer, many scholarly publications, books, all kinds of articles. If I'm correct, your first dipping of your toe into the fiction side came with a kids novel.
Yes, thank you for that. So that was actually my own novel, and I should back up and say,
So now we're Black Maple Magazine Media Group. There's a Black Maple Magazine itself, which you can find at blackmaplemagazine.com. Then we have Black Maple Magazine Productions, which is music. Our first output there is a soundtrack that goes with a romance novel. Because we said, I threw that rule book that said soundtracks are only for movies out the window, Trudy. I said, who made that rule up? Let's rethink that. And the first book actually in Black Maple Magazine Publishing was my own illustrated children's book called Joe the Pressman, Pressman, about a real man renamed Joe. And I say renamed because we know he was born in Africa, enslaved, survived the Middle Passage, the transit across the Atlantic Ocean, and somehow got enslaved in Quebec City by the two white men who founded the Quebec Gazette. And they forced him to become literate in French and English and to run their press. So I have then transformed Joe's real-life biography into something suitable for children to start to teach them at an earlier age about the horror show of transatlantic slavery, but of course in an age-appropriate way.
And now we have Blood and Water, a love story. This another leap for you, another jump. What prompted that, Charmaine?
Oh, can I tell you, Trudy? I have been a romance novel lover for most of my adult life. And as a Black Canadian woman, what I've had to do to so-called see myself is to read African-American greats like Terry McMillan, Eric Jerome Dickey, and Elin Harris, who held it down for years in this landscape. And can I tell you, Trudy, what people don't understand, some people want to turn away and laugh at romance novels. They should not. It's a $1.4 billion with a B U.S. dollar industry in the U.S. per year. In Canada, they estimate it's 435 million Canadian dollars a year. There are serious people who are constantly reading these books. But as you can imagine, the default is white female, white male protagonist, almost never set in our own country in Canada. And almost never, there's only a handful, like we could count on our two hands, the romance novels about Canadians that center Black female or male protagonists. They just don't exist. And why this is important is because what these romance novels cultivate and teach us is who can be beautiful, who can be heroic, who can be intelligent, who is beloved, right? Whose body and beauty are ideal. And how Black women typically show up, Trudy, is as sidekicks and best friends at the office. So think about that ongoing impact that we as Black Canadians have had to when we want to see Black leads, right? We've had to read African-American literature where good for them, but the African-Americans, their cultural references and context are about America, as they should be. So when they're listening to music in the novel, or when there's a family cookout, it's African-American food, it's African-American music. The cultural references are not us. The dominant Black Canadian population are Anglo-Caribbeans. And we have just not had the reflection of ourselves up until now in Blood and Water.
What did you draw on to get those references to the Canadian experience in, did you have your own experiences here in Canada? Did you talk to other people about, well, what's it like for you? What are you seeing in BC? What are you seeing in Nova Scotia?
Well, I'm so lucky because I'm the publisher. So all I had to do was find Andrea Ramirez, who is the author of this book. And she has created, I tell you, Trudy, this is a tremendous book. The protagonist is this dynamic, highly educated, gorgeous Black female named Alexandra. Her nickname is Lexi Peters, who's a Jamaican Canadian who's living a high-flying urban life in Toronto. And it's what we call a second chance romance, in that she's reunited with the love of her life, who she fell in love with at the age of 18. He was 21 at the time. And it's a Ukrainian-Canadian labor lawyer named Derek Crane. And how Ramirez has done a remarkable job, because the beginning of the novel, the first few chapters unfold with having them trapped in a blizzard in 1999 at the Boston Bonaventure Hotel.
Wonderful.
And she does this. Yeah,
Thumbs up just from that perspective.
Thank you. They cannot escape each other. And why this is so important is that there's been a trauma that separated them across a decade, right? So we meet them in 1999, and there's flashbacks to 1989 when they were first in love. But what has happened is a heinous crime has been committed. So it's also a thriller against Lexi. And Lexi's defense was, I'm going to protect Derek. He must never know what happened to me, and I shall just leave him. And he'll never know, but I'm protecting him from this truth. So when they come back together, then she needs to find a mechanism to literally lock them down, because a typical meet cute on the streets of Toronto would never have worked. So another brilliant thing then is that this novel is transpiring between Boston and Toronto. So as Canadians, like, oh, a sigh. It's like, finally, it's us. It's home, right? We get the cultural references. For instance, Derek and Lexi are from the GTA, right? So, and then the default family life of Lexi is Jamaican Canadian. They go back to her family's house. They hear, old school reggae. Her dad is playing old school reggae, the Techniques Queen Majesty from 1967. She hears the clatter of dominoes. They smell curry chicken and plantain. It's finally us, Trudy. It's finally Black Canadianness that's on display in this wonderful, rich novel.
And it starts with a Montreal reference, which is bonus. Absolute bonus. All right. Where can folks find Blood and Water, A Love Story?
Well, it's on, you can get the ebook on Amazon.ca. And also, if you go to blackmaplemagazine.com, at the top, we have a shop where we also sell gear. So we sell hats, we sell joggers, and we sell our one-of-a-kind hoodie. And you'll see a tab also for the soundtrack, which is an original R&B and hip-hop soundtrack, and for the book as well, which is available, again, in ebook or paperback.
What else is in your pipeline, Charmaine?
Oh, my gosh. Well, I'm always looking for the next great find. We've also published a book called A Time, A Place, Our Gaze, Trudy, which is an exhibition catalog of Kenneth Scott, who is an African New Brunswicker. His vernacular 20th century photography collection. We did a show down here in Amherst, Massachusetts for him back in February through April. But we also published a wonderful exhibition catalog documenting his collection and the relevance of photography for Black Canadians and Black diaspora. So 3 titles so far, and just onwards and upwards, Trudy.
Dr. Charmaine Nelson, thank you for your time this morning.
Oh, thank you. It's been a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Dr. Charmaine Nelson, Black Maple Magazine. You can find that online. And the name of the romance novel is Blood and Water, A Love Story.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. We're coming to get you! One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them. It's only love, and that's all.
Bryan Adams Radio. I'm coming back to you. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.
Missed something?
Subscribe to the Elias Macko Show podcast to catch up.
Available on iHeartRadio and wherever you get your podcasts.
It has been 3 years since Canada's Online News Act prompted Facebook and Instagram to declare that Canadian news content would no longer be published on those platforms. However, it seems a lot of people have either forgotten or they never knew in the first place. We'll dive into some new findings out of some research by McGill.
iHeartRadio is throwing it back
2010s, the decade.
to the days of huge hits and unforgettable anthems. A non-stop stream of the biggest and best.
Drake, Rihanna, Beyonce, Katy, Gaga, The Weeknd.
And more. All your decade-defining favorites all in one place.
Hi, it's Katy Perry.
Hey, it's Bruno Mars.
This is Kesha.
Find 2010's The Decade on the free iHeartRadio app. Preset the station so it's always one tap away. Stories impacting Montrealers. News impacting Montreal. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
Trudy sitting in for Elias. It has been 3 years, almost 3 years, since Meta decided that its response to the Online News Act passed by Canada would be to block Canadian news from Facebook and Instagram. The Online News Act is the one that said that these big web companies should pay financial compensation for the news content published by Canadian media on its platforms. So instead of paying, Meta just decided, no, it will restrict media content on Facebook and Instagram. And what's interesting is, as just discovered by some research out of McGill, most Canadians are unaware that professional news content from Canadian media organizations can no longer be shared or viewed on Facebook and Instagram. They might not have understood that, but what might have been happening with them, kind of not really aware of it, is if they're looking for news, what they may be pushed toward is influencers, people whose goal is commentary and not really news reporting, or, just lighthearted stuff like memes, riffs on the news that don't get into a lot of facts, are more really just a reaction to it. Here to tell us more about the research is Aengus Bridgman, Director of Media Ecosystem Observatory and an assistant professor at the Max Bell School of Public Policy at McGill University. Aengus, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Trudy.
Tell us about this, the results that you are drawing from this survey.
So we've been studying this issue since the initial ban, over the past 3 years. And what we're seeing now is sort of a radical transformation of where Canadians are getting their information. We can think about the transition from sort of purely broadcast media through to kind of a social media era where broadcast media was widely available on social media. And now we're kind of in a stage where there are kind of two major replacements for traditional media. One is creator content or influencer content, and the other is sort of AI chatbots and AI interfaces. And so really what we've seen in the last 5 years is this huge transformation. And then, of course, the Meta news ban has contributed enormously to this. And sort of we estimated after the first year about a daily drop of about 11 million views of Canadian news stories per day.
Tell us about the mechanism. Like, let's say I'm on Facebook and I want to share a link to a CTV news story about fill in the blank. So I figure I'll just go on Facebook. I'll do a little post. I'll include the link, or I'll try and otherwise send people who read my Facebook page to that link. What happens?
You're going to get a no due to C18. You cannot share this content. And so Canadians will have seen that. And despite that, most people who use the platforms, even many of the people who use the platforms and say, hey, we use these platforms to get news, don't actually know that's happened. And, there's a variety of sources of that confusion, one of which is that there are still some sort of news sites that have squeaked through that are not on that list. And also there's been sort of a proliferation of quasi-news sites. So they're not doing original reporting, but they're kind of repackaging. They're blending a mix of lifestyle, sport, news content together. And so it kind of feels still like the news is there, even though actual news reporting, actual context-rich, factually accurate information is missing from those platforms now.
I think what media outlets, including CTV and the Gazette and all the other media outlets who are affected by this were hoping, is that users of Facebook and Instagram would realize that they were missing something and start going directly to the media outlets platform, going to CJAD800.com or going to the websites run by La Presse or the Gazette. Is this not happening?
There has actually been some of that, and what we saw particularly in response to sort of Trump, the 51st state language, was a little bit of a resurgence and a bit of a kick back to Canadian media organizations. So we did see that. But you got to remember that social media is increasingly the primary way in which people are engaging with their broader community and their broader political world. And there are very strong lock-in effects. If you use Facebook or if you use Instagram and you spend your time there and that's how you get your information, then even if you have the best of intentions, even if you want to go seek out Canadian news media, and you will do that, you're not going to see it where you're spending 1, 2, 3, 4 hours a day on your primary kind of social feed. And so it really has been a fairly big hit for Canadian news visibility, and I would say overall sort of the quality and accuracy of information that's been flowing to Canadians.
I know that media outlets have a financial interest in being extremely worried about those trends, but do you see any other non-money related fallout from this phenomenon that concern you?
So there's the broad phenomena of people getting their news from social and increasingly creators and increasingly AI chatbots. And these trends, it's an evolution. It's not a disaster, but there are some worrying trends. One of the things that I often say about this is that one of the things that news media did very well and continues to do is through sort of the way they aggregate and share multiple angles, multiple stories, multiple perspectives, they give kind of a collective sense of the political reality. And what can happen if you are spending all your time on social media is that you get down sort of very narrow topics and political areas of interest that really are, you can get very deep and you can have a really rich understanding, but only of a narrow slice of what we'll say is sort of the overall Canadian pie. And what that means is for politics, for democracy, for civic conversations, you simply don't have the ability to have kind of a shared understanding as a country. And that is very worrying. And we see this in terms of sort of general political knowledge and sort of commitment to democracy and democratic ideals. And we're seeing that show up in surveys now.
One of the things, Angus, that worries me a lot with online content, and I think there are pluses and minuses to things like citizen journalism, although I would put that in quotation marks because often there's no, check on that. There's no editing process involved in that where you have someone maybe more experienced taking a look at your work before it's published. And there are influencers who are dealing in opinion. I'm all fine with that. But what I worry about is there's very little transparency about where these people are making their money, who they're taking money from. Not a lot of them have established correction procedures like mainstream media. So mainstream media, yes, mainstream media makes mistakes. I'll be the first to admit that mainstream media makes mistakes because I've made mistakes myself. But there's usually a corrections process in place, and a lot of these platforms don't have an established, process for that. And the other thing is they leave you with the impression they're reporting news, but they're not. They're not news people. They are opinion writers and opinion sharers, and their goal is not to be a news person. The goal is to influence opinion. So I don't know if you share any of those concerns.
So change is scary in the information environment, and there's a lot to be worried about here. I think Canadians in general are turning creators, right? And so there's continued attention paid to traditional media kind of sources as well as to this kind of creator economy. One kind of framing thing that I find useful here is that the creator economy and that as sort of a source of influence is very new. And we actually don't have the proper language or ability to speak about creators and how they impact things like elections. So during electoral events, if you're a third party, you have spending limits. There are all these sort of rules that govern factual accuracy during elections. But that's all meant for kind of the institutions, the character of discourse of yesterday. And we haven't really gotten a good grasp on what a creator is. And just sort of to give a very specific example, we can think about sort of a high-profile creator. There was an incident with Russian funding to 6 influencers in the West. And when you talk to those influencers, they'll talk about themselves being a media organization. They have companies, they have staff that help write. But when we think about them as individual influencers. It's just this person, right? It's just this one person spreading their opinion. But actually they're not. They are an institution. And yet they are totally liberated from all of the sort of shared norms that we have collectively decided should govern speech during an election and should contribute to a healthy democratic discourse. And so there's this contradiction. Now, I'm not saying you should have just rampant restrictions on that, but there should be awareness and there should be kind of conversations about what norms, what responsibilities creators actually do have towards their audience and what rules during elections should or should not govern their speech.
Very interesting, Aengus. Thank you for your time this morning.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Aengus Bridgman, Director of the Media Ecosystem Observatory and Assistant Professor at the Max Bell School of Public Policy at McGill.
Unmistakably Canadian.
It's the music that raised you.
The artists raising the bar.
Hi, this is Brian Adams.
Hey, my name's Brett Emmons. I'm from the Glorious Sons.
Hi, I'm Nelly Furtado.
Made in Canada. The station that champions Canadian music.
Loud, proud, and all yours.
No passports required. Just press play.
Tap into Made in Canada now on iHeartRadio.ca
or the free iHeartRadio app.
Stories impacting Montrealers. News impacting Montreal. The Elias Macko Show. News Talk Radio. CJAD 800.
It looks like a lovely day out there. I can't wait to get out into the much more comfortable 20 degrees that we are downtown right now. Forecast is telling us to expect plenty of sun through the day, a high of 25, and the humidex only at 27. So, it's also going to be comfortable sleeping tonight with a low of 18. Anything below 20 degrees, I think, is comfortable for sleeping. And as I said, 20 degrees right now, lots of sun outside the studio. And look who is sitting in studio with me now. Why, it's Joanne Vrakas.
How are you?
I'm very well.
I was just telling you that I had a little listen this weekend, your conversation with Aaron about your unexpected or unwanted stop in the U.S.
Oh, our need to transit the U.S. to get to our vacation.
Yeah. And then that you were staunch that you were not spending
money,
not a penny. And I was saying to you, I was so surprised afterwards by some of the reactions or people, I find it so defeatist to just say, well, we have to admit the Americans are stronger than us, and we're gonna have to sort of acquiesce. And no. Let's have some backbone, people.
Yeah. And I understand there's a lot of arguments. Oh, we're penalizing the states closest to us, but they are Democrat states, we're don't penalize. Go to California, they didn't vote.
Yeah.
But
we didn't make this bed.
Yes.
We did not make this bed.
Yeah. And I think to some degree, we had a caller who had, was it a caller or a texter? We were doing a topic this week associated with this, and from Burlington. Mm-hmm. And he said only 30% of people in Vermont voted Republican. I'm thinking that's 1 out of 3.
Yeah.
And because he was saying, don't punish us.
Yeah.
We didn't vote. Our state didn't vote, but still 30% did. That's a lot of people.
If we could take it individually, it maybe, but it doesn't work that way. I totally understand what you're saying, that, you don't want to be spending money somewhere where the word is not unfriendly. It's aggressive. And we didn't take to those 51st comment states lightly. And I think many of the states were surprised that we took it so seriously. And we handled it in a Canadian way. We didn't pick up arms. We don't really have arms, but we did it. We, put our money where our mouth is.
We kind of use the power that we have.
Power
in
of the purse.
case, it's your vacation money.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting on our cruise because on board our ship, of course, there are lots of Americans on board the ship. And we we never broach politics. We never, not once did we say the T word. But I was just standing in front of an elevator on the cruise ship, and man was standing there waiting with me, chit-chatting. Oh, did you, where are you from? And I said, oh, we're from Montreal. Mm-hmm. I didn't say Canada. I said, we're from Montreal. I didn't want to start anything.
Who would have thought that would be fighting? Those would be fighting words,
And he said, that's interesting. Can I just start off by saying we're very sorry. I did not vote for that person, and I'm very sorry for what your country is going through. So there was an immediate awareness.
Yeah.
And in another case, we ended up sitting down for a drink with a couple we met in the port from another ship who were Americans from New Hampshire. And it was very, very similar when they found out where we're from. It's, oh, we're so sorry.
You know what it is? And they feel it. And by the way, most Canadians, if not all Canadians, understand that it's not every single individual American person, but that, again, we did not make this bed. This is not a bed that we made. These are the cards that were laid out in front of us, and people are I miss when I was a kid. We used to go to Cape Cod every summer with my family, like a lot of families. And I was saying to my husband, wouldn't it be nice to do that this year? And immediately there was just we looked at each other like, no. That's like, it's just so natural now that for the next little while, at least for the next few years,
We have so little power, but this is one area where we have power. So hopefully it's temporary.
We'll see.
Tell us what is coming up, Joanne, on the weekend show.
Well, we have lots of fun stuff. I discovered this company called Eco Pâturage. Basically, you might be seeing sheep all over the city soon in different parks. It's called eco-grazing. It helps the environment. So they're bringing sheep into the city so they can leave us their little
droppings. Nutritious droppings.
Nutritious droppings. Your words. And also sort of take care of the landscaping. And I thought it was absolutely adorable. It's like a trend that's becoming more and more popular. We're going to be speaking to our child psychologist, Dr. Tamara Souls, about sibling bickering during the summer months. I have 2 boys. A lot of people have 2 kids. Now they're in camp, but they're spending an awful lot of time with each other. And so it's like Lord of the Flies at my house sometimes.
Are they far enough in age that they're in different classes at the camp, like different groups at the
They're
camp?
like 18 months apart, but just at the phase where one just got into the older group. So they have that sort of separation. So we get a little bit of peace there. Also, we'll be talking about ageism in the workplace. If you're looking, no, not in the workplace, on the job search. So if you're over 40 apparently right now, some of the AI...
It starts at 40?
They're saying it's 40 right now.
It used to be 50.
Yeah. So we're going to be taking a closer look at, are there ways around it? Like, how do you know that it's happening to you? And also, can you sort of legitimately trick that on your CV so that... Because now it's not necessarily recruiters who are looking, right? It goes through the AI first, and then the AI will hand it over. And also discussing incels, the very troubling phenomenon.
Hello, Canada.
This is Bryan Adams Radio. Hosted by Bryan Adams himself.
We'll play a few of mine, a ton of my favorites, and some must-hear behind-the-scenes stories from the world of rock and roll. One thing about doing rock and roll so long is you end up meeting a lot of the people that you admire. Sometimes you even get to work with them.
It's only love, and that's all. Bryan Adams Radio. Now available on the free iHeartRadio app.
Hey everybody, how are you tonight? Sounds great.
Of the involuntarily celibate, as they call themselves.
Yeah, young men.
These young lost boys.
Being radicalized, too.
No bueno. And lots of other fun stuff.
All right. Yeah. Looking forward to that. Joanne Vrakas, of course, host of CJAD 800's Weekend Morning Show. Always fun to talk to you, Joanne.
Lovely.
Thanks for coming into studio. My sincere thanks to the team in Master Control, the technical wizard Andrew Malik, and content producer Maxim Kadot. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And folks, enjoy the rest of this sunny day in Montreal and enjoy your weekend too.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to the Voice of Montreal.
News Talk Radio, CJAD 800.
An iHeartRadio station.
Hey, I'm Ruby Carr, the host of the podcast Encore. Check out our brand new episodes featuring music from the show that everyone is reheating as we speak, Heated Rivalry. Join me as I go behind the songs that brought Shane and Elia together. I'll tell you the stories of Feist, My Moon, My Man, Wolf Parade's I'll Believe in Anything, and Tattoo's All the Things She Said, and how they all became a part of this global phenomenon. Stream Encore on iHeartRadio, Crave, or wherever you get your podcasts.